Okay, so I want to. Okay, so I want to make sure that this volume is going to be okay. I think if we do 3.5 decibels, it'd be pretty good. Yeah, let's do that. So audio. Yeah. Cool. All right, welcome to the show. The new show that I've wanted to start for quite a while. Let me get my camera all set up here so it's working correctly. All right, yeah. So I've wanted to do this for a while. This is not a good intro, but we'll just start with an intro. Welcome to Saving Progress. This is a new show, politics and new show that I'm putting on. This is the first inaugural episode of Saving Progress, so this is going to be kind of a little bit different than probably future episodes where we have things more organized. Okay, so the purpose of this show is to give information and commentary about what's happening in the world, politics wise, gaming wise, things like that, right? Cool. So today's episode, let's see what today we are covering Biden new presidential announcement. Oh, by the way, I am your host, Proxy. Today we're covering Ted Cruz. We have some audio of him talking about how he wanted to steal the election on January 6th. Was that 2 years ago already? Got some audio from him. Biden makes his new presidential announcement. We got some libraries closing due to budget cuts, and Tucker Carlson's replacement for his show not doing so well in the ratings ratings category, and we'll see that in a second. All right, so we're going to talk about all this and some more in today's episode of Saving Progress. All right, let's see if I got my switching here is going on. Okay, cool. So, as you know, January 6th, I believe that was 2 years ago already, we had an insurrection at the United States Capitol of where right wing MAGAs wanted to stop the election certification so they can get their boy Trump, keep him in office. They basically wanted to throw away democracy and yeah, so that was actually pretty scary. People trying to take over the Capitol, and actually a lot of Congress people there were condemning right wingers like MTG and Trump, and saying basically this is your fault that this is happening. So this was going on that day or the day after, pretty similar, pretty recently to January 6th. But it seems like everybody's forgot about that on the right wing anyway. And they decided, well, actually, it wasn't an insurrection. They were touring around the Capitol and it wasn't a big deal. Which is completely gaslighting everybody of what actually happened. Oh, 2020. Yeah. So I guess that'd be 3 years ago. So there's actually there's some new audio about Ted Cruz talking about basically January 6th before it happened. So let's go ahead and take a look and see what he says in these clips.
I think that the country deserves to have credible assessments of these claims and what the evidence shows. And the mechanism to try to force that is denying certification on the 6th.
Okay, this is on January 2nd, and essentially what he's saying is before they were, the certification of the results of the presidential election, he's basically saying, well, we want to deny that before, before it's happening, essentially. And here's the thing about right-wingers and conservatives in general, and especially these conservative politicians, people like Trump and Cruz and people like that, and that is they never directly say, or they very rarely directly say, this election was stolen, right? So as you can see here, he doesn't say like the election was rigged or stolen. He kind of dances around the the, the idea and has the reader get to that themselves. And they kind of do this to kind of protect themselves. So they say, wait a minute, we didn't say that the election was stolen. But they say stuff like, oh, there's some funny stuff going on here. There might have been some ballot votes that have been stuffed for the Democrats, things like that. So let's see what else he says in these calls.
Who's deciding who gets inaugurated?
It would be the results of that commission and what they find. And if they found credible evidence of fraud that undermines confidence in the electoral results in any given state, they would report on that.
Yeah. So it's basically the same thing here. He's talking about, well, if there is evidence of the election being stolen, then we're going to report on that and stop the certification, right? And as somebody like you that consumes media, it's very important to really listen and watch everything with a critical eye and a critical ear, so that you just don't take everybody at their word. If they say XYZ, then you're going to ask questions about that. You don't just take it as their word all the time anyway. Well, the things that conservatives do, and it's completely fine to question things, well, they bring up questions that aren't really related, that turn the conversation into another direction totally, right? So they start asking, wait, well, let's see if the election was rigged. Let's see if there were fraudulent votes. Let's see, maybe there was some funny business going around there. And by asking those questions, they put it in their followers' mind that, hey, you know what? That election was stolen. We need to do something about it. We need to do some horrible acts. And some of them have done some pretty bad things because they thought the election was stolen. And like I said, what they do is they don't straight out say what they want their followers to do. They don't say, hey, let's siege the Capitol. What they say is, well, let's make these guys aware of what we're doing and things like that, So they know exactly what they're doing, riling up their base. It's all a giant power grab, and let's see how long this will go on for. It's just absolutely ridiculous, if you ask me. So let's go ahead, and what I'm going to do is before we go to our next story, I'm going to change some settings on my camera here. And let's see here. Second, guys. All right. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put my beautiful face right here. There we go. Give me 1 second. Settings. Okay. Let's do this. Do this here. Cool. All right, cool. So that is what we have for Ted Cruz and his what's going on with his guys. Like I said, it's completely obvious of what they're doing. Um, I'm not sure how to tackle it to be perfectly honest to see what's going on here. All right. Next story we have here is Biden. We have from Reuters says Biden 80 refers to his age, 80 years old, makes 2024 presidential run official as Trump fight looms. Right? Okay. So basically, we have Biden. He's announcing his presidency, his run for presidency, his next run for presidency to be reelected. Let's see what he says here in this new reelection video he's put out.
Freedom. Personal freedom is fundamental to who we are as Americans.
There's nothing more important, nothing more sacred.
That's been the work of my first term, to fight for our democracy.
This shouldn't be a red or blue issue.
To protect our rights, to make sure that everyone in this country is treated equally and that everyone is given a fair shot at making it. But you know, around the country, MAGA extremists are lining up to take on those bedrock freedoms, cutting Social Security that you paid for your entire life while cutting taxes for the very wealthy, dictating what healthcare decisions women can make, banning books, and telling people who they can love, all while making it more difficult for you to be able to vote. When I ran for president 4 years ago, I said we're in a battle for the soul of America, and we still are. The question we're facing is whether in the years ahead we have more freedom or less freedom, more rights or fewer. I know what I want the answer to be, and I think you do too. This is not a time to be complacent. That's why I'm running for re-election. Because I know America. I know we're good and decent people. I know we're still a country that believes in honesty and respect and treating each other with dignity. That we're a nation where we give hate no safe harbor. We believe that everyone is equal, that everyone should be given a fair shot to succeed in this country.
Thank you for choosing us.
Every generation of Americans has faced a moment when they have to defend democracy. Stand up for our personal freedom. Stand up for the right to vote and our civil rights. And this is our moment. So if you're with me, go to joebiden.com and sign up. Let's finish this job. I know we can. Because this is the United States of America. There's nothing, simply nothing we cannot do if we do it together.
All right, so we got let's finish the job is looks like the main rallying call that Joe Biden is kind of positioning himself. You know, Trump has "Let's make America great" or "Make America great again," and this year Biden is saying, you know, let's continue the job. You know, and that's fine. I'm not a huge Biden fan. I will say, you know, he hasn't really done anything that's made me say, well, I can't believe he's done that. You know, I hate. He hasn't done anything that I'm aware of that I absolutely, you know, hate or despise. I will say, you know, I'm not a Democrat. I'm just a progressive, and I will say that Joe Biden is a trillion times better than Donald Trump. Donald Trump and the Republicans are just a straight up fascist party now. And he actually mentions that in his campaign ad, essentially. And he's saying here, which I'm glad he pointed it out, was he's saying, they're banning books. I really like how he has here he has some footage from January 6th, what's going on there. So that's great to kind of keep that in the mind of, the average Republican. I don't think this will really mean much to the people on the fringe, on the Republican fringe, but people kind of, in the middle of the line there. I think continuing bringing up the January 6th siege, the attack on the Capitol, and showing footage of it to remind them, hey, this is what this other party's trying to do. They're trying to adopt democracy, essentially. I think it's good to keep that on the top of the mind of the kind of centrist voter. I also really like here talking about Social Security, cutting Social Security. Now, not only because Social Security is very important to keep the elderly and disabled and people like that from extreme poverty, but a lot of older people vote more than younger people, and kind of putting this in their mind that Republicans are going to cut Social Security is great to target older people and let them know, hey, Republicans are coming after your Social Security. And then they also have healthcare decisions, so hitting on the pro-choice movement here, and then we have pro-trans, acceptance, essentially. I think that's pretty great. Now it's pretty. I think it's a pretty good ad. Now, here's the thing. I know what's going to happen is all these Republican and right wing commentators. What they're going to do is they're going to say, Joe Biden. He said that we're taking away freedoms, right? And Joe Biden said that what was it? He says something about, I believe, equality for all, and I know. I'm going to come back a couple days later and see that Ben Shapiro and his ilk and people like that are going to say, oh, equality, well, that's Marxism, cultural Marxism. The communists are taking over. The communists were all about social equality, and that's what the Democrats want to bring on you, this upcoming election. So I really hope it's not. It's going to be Joe Biden and Trump again. I can't believe it. I would rather have somebody else I would have somebody more progressive than Joe Biden running for the Democrats. But I think he's probably the most marketable. And when it comes to winning the election, I would definitely have people more aligned with my agenda. But if it comes to having people that only believe in 30%, 40% of my agenda versus people who are actively trying to get elected to destroy the country and take power like the fascist Republicans, then I'll take I'll take Joe Biden every time out of that. All right, so that's it for Joe Biden is announcing his announcement. All right, so if you have been keeping up with the news, a lot of libraries are getting shut down, right? And conservative parents and conservative voters are doing this. What they're doing is they are stopping funding from funding libraries. And so what's happening a lot of the time is librarians or whoever's in charge of the library, conservatives and far right people say, well, we want to get rid of these specific books. It's usually talking about trans issues, things like that. The libraries say, no, we're going to keep these in our libraries. And then what the conservatives do is they say, well, we're just going to vote to defund the library and close the whole thing down. So they would rather have no libraries than have people being able to read about ideas that they don't agree with, all right? So this is an NYC. NYC budget would close libraries on weekends while police get huge bonuses. So this isn't a completely closure of the library. I just want to throw this story in real quick. I didn't bring this up because it's about, NYC or closing libraries to give police more budget. I really want to bring this to your attention if you don't know, if you're not aware of just the closure of libraries going across the country. I know a lot of my acquaintances are showing me pictures and news articles that their libraries are getting defunded, like on a very, very local level. This is a real thing. And, an uneducated, uninformed voter is going to vote Republican, right? That's just how it works. Um, if you don't know any better, you're going to vote conservative or Republican. The Republicans benefit from an uneducated and uninformed populace. That's not me saying that. That's just true, right? And they've said that in the past. They've said, we want less education, less stuff like that, so we get more power essentially. And it's seen in every level of education. It's seen why Republicans want to, their attack on education as a whole, their attack on universities. Every educational institution is liberal and progressive and evil, right? Well, that's their strategy to defund education, to fund information, free information available to people to get more voters. That's what's going on here. That's it for. I just want to point that out. Not bringing up specifically NYC, but just the closures of libraries continue. All right, so we have if you haven't been paying attention this week, Tucker Carlson basically got fired from Fox yesterday or the day before. I think he was probably the biggest show on the network, and he brings in millions and millions and millions of dollars each year, probably tens and maybe hundreds of $1 billion. I don't know where you would see that on the line item of their financials, but Tucker Carlson was a pretty big player in Fox News. He's been there for a while, and he was a big proponent of the Dominican voting machines and how they were, used to steal the election. Well, it looks like Fox just settled out of court for Dominican with the machine company, the voting machine company, for something like $700 million. And so essentially, Tucker Carlson cost them $700 million. And I saw some numbers around online and it looked like either Fox News or their parent company, and it was either the revenue or net income that it was around $600 or $700 million. So essentially, Tucker Carlson wiped out a full year of either revenue or profit. I can't remember, Fox or its parent company. So he made a pretty big mistake. So let this be a lesson to you. If you cost your boss $700 million, you're probably going to get fired. So what they're doing now, Fox, is they're doing a rotating host kind of shows to fill his time slot until a new replacement gets found for Tucker Carlson. So what they're doing is they're replacing with Fox News Tonight. Let's take a look at this. This is from Daily Caller. Tucker Carlson Tonight replacement drops in key age demo ratings on first night. The first episode of Fox News Tonight, the replacement program for Tucker Carlson Tonight, dropped in ratings within the key 25 to 54 year age demographic after premiering Monday evening. Showbuzz Daily data shows. And then it looks like the rest of the article basically gives some background, some more numbers. But what's really funny here is the key 25 to 54 demographic. Now, I know in like media buying and advertising and things like that, you have specific age segments or demos that you want to target. I think typically the demos are a little bit smaller, like 19 to 25 versus 26 to 31. That's what demos look like, usually like 10 years or younger. It's pretty interesting that they have a key demographic from 25 to 45. And basically it looks like, the show just dropped, right? Just dropped in popularity. So his final show got 2.65 million viewers when it aired Friday. Had 3.3 million views. So this guy was constantly getting millions and millions of views every single. I think he did it every single night or 4 nights a week. This is fantastic. To be honest, the fewer people that we get, the fewer people who are listening to this extremist from right wing extremist that frankly just goes on air and tells straight up lies and white nationalist propaganda, the fewer people that can that message gets to, the better, right? So pretty happy here. Fewer people watching Fox is better for the nation. There have been studies in the past that show Fox News viewers, which I know this isn't Fox News, but this is like Fox Prime Time at night, things like that. But studies in the past have shown that Fox News viewers are actually less informed on current issues than people who don't watch any news at all. So, the fewer people, like I said, that tune into Fox, the better. That means fewer people being radicalized by them, fewer people, basically fewer Republican voters, and less revenue for Fox, essentially. So great. Hope the eyeballs on your shows go somewhere else. Hopefully, it's not going into somewhere more extreme like Newsmax or some of those other even more right wing shows. Although I will say Tucker was pretty right wing, pretty white nationalist guy, according to a lot of his rhetoric. Let's look at our next story here. So we have, all right. Our next story: House Republican debt bill would throw $600,000 off health insurance. The institutional psychopathy of the Republican Party in one stat. This is from nymag.com. And let's take a look at this. Okay. The Limit, Save, Grow Act of 2023, the House Republicans' ransom terms for lifting the debt ceiling, would, among other things, create work requirements for people receiving Medicaid. The Congressional Budget Office estimates that this measure alone would throw 600,000 low-income Americans off their insurance. The plan is almost certainly not going to take effect. President Biden has refused to pay any ransom to lift the debt ceiling, and even if he winds up backing down from that stance, it would be unimaginable for him to accept such a draconian provision. But the fact that Republicans are voting for this does send a signal about what their party believes. The purpose of the Limit, Save, Grow Act is to identify budget cuts that the entire Republican Party can agree on. They have ruled out cutting Medicare and Social Security because they see those programs as too popular to cut, or at least too popular to take the political heat of voting to cut when they know the cuts won't take effect. They have likewise ruled out cutting defense because many Republicans oppose it. Several energy subsidies have been the subject of intra-Republican haggling on the grounds that they matter to a handful of Republican districts. But cutting Medicaid counts as a position of Republicans' unity. Specifically, the Republican plan is to require people receiving Medicaid to prove they are working or taking steps forward to finding a job or training for one. In practice, this means they must fill out a bunch of additional complicated paperwork to keep their insurance. Okay. Arkansas experimented with this policy under the Trump administration. The result was a failure, at least by the policy stated goal of encouraging unemployed people to get jobs. It did not increase employment over 18 months of follow-up, a study found, but it did cause people to lose their health insurance because they weren't aware of the work requirements or didn't know how to navigate them. As a result, they delayed care, skipped medication, and had higher levels of medical debt. The CBO estimates, in fact, that out of the 15 million Americans subject to the work requirement, some 1.5 million would fail, but it further estimates that 900,000 of those people would keep their coverage because they reside in states that care enough about them to shell out for their Medicaid. This has to do with national versus local Medicaid funding. The remaining 600,000 reside in states sufficiently indifferent to their fate to let them surprisingly go insured. Okay, so yeah, essentially here, what they're going to do is they're having negotiation for the debt ceiling again. So basically, if you're not aware what the debt ceiling is, the U.S. government can, I believe it's Congress, allows them. They say you're allowed to have this much debt, and they basically what they do is negotiate. They call it the debt ceiling, how much debt the United States government can take on. They negotiate this every couple of years. And every couple of years, it's always like a hostage situation. It's always When there's a Republican in office, it's spend, 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 spend. We don't care about the budget. We don't care about debt. But when it's a Democrat in office, it's we got to cut, 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 reduce, not increase the debt ceiling, and that's essentially what the playbook is for Republicans. Now, when it comes to increasing the debt ceiling, a lot of people really don't understand how national debt works. They think it's like household debt. And with household debt, you just, you want to have typically as little debt as possible with your household debt, personal finances. Well, when it comes to government and, and business, having debt is not necessarily a bad thing. It really depends on what the interest is on that debt. So, for example, we'll look at a business. For example, if a business takes out, a loan of $1,000 at, we'll just say, I have no idea what interest rates are at 8%. Let's say they take out 8%, loan on 8%. So if they can take that $1,000 and get a higher return on their business, maybe they'll get 30% on that money with their business, then it's worth it for them to take on that debt so they can use that debt to get a higher ROI on that debt. That's essentially what happens with government debt. As long as they are using those funds to get a higher ROI or making use of those funds, it's perfectly fine to have a large national debt. Now, people have a rallying say like, China owns the U.S. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but really owed in the United States government debt is mostly towards, I believe, bondholders, U.S. bondholders. I think China has a large portion, but it's not like 50%, 60%. I think it's like maybe 15 or 7. It's not as big as the Republicans will make it out to be. So basically what happens every time they want to negotiate the debt ceiling is, Republicans give, they say, if you don't agree to cut all these programs, then what we're going to do is we're not going to agree with your provisions. We're going to shut down the government, and government shutdown hurts a lot of people. And basically do this every time to negotiate for the debt ceiling. Now, I hate to use this word, but a lot of what Republicans do during these times, and what they're doing now, is virtue signaling, right? And this article explains it that they know these cuts aren't going to get accepted or anything, and they know it's not going to be, any part of real negotiations. But what it does signals to their base that, hey, we are trying to cut the debt, but the Democrats won't let us, right? So that's basically what they're doing. They're trying to say, when Republicans do this a lot, when they don't have power to do something, they'll vote for it. They'll vote for things they typically wouldn't vote for because they know it wouldn't pass, but then they can go and tell their constituents, well, we voted for this, right? So it's all, politics is essentially what it is. So, if this would pass, it's probably not going to pass. A lot of people would get kicked off their, I think, Medicaid. Pro-life party is willing to kick people off of government assistance. I want to talk about this for a second, too. A lot of, actually, Republicans, I think I heard in a Charlie Kirk debate that fewer people in government programs is a good thing, right? So that's kind of like a yes and no. Like, getting fewer people off of, say, food stamps, Republicans tout fewer people on food stamps is great. And the thinking behind that is these people that were on food stamps, now they're making more money and they don't need food stamps. So that's great for the economy, great for everybody. They pulled up their bootstraps and worked pretty hard. The reality, what the Republicans do is they make these qualifications to receive these benefits, like food stamps, or what is the EBT cards. What they do is they change the requirements of these, so it kicks people off of them. Their messaging is, hey, we've helped these people pull themselves up and don't need these programs anymore. But what they really do is they just kick people off that still need these programs, and then they call it a success. So anytime you see Republicans touting that fewer people are on government programs, it's probably not because those people don't need them anymore. It's probably because the Republicans found some way to kick them off of this assistance they were getting. All right, quick story here. This is from a Life News, a anti-abortion website here, but I just saw this. Just wanted to, this is definitely a very biased source, but just wanted to bring this up. So I saw this headline: Mike Pence, abortion is more important than politics. We must save babies from abortions. Okay. Former Vice President Mike Pence said protecting unborn babies from abortion is a top priority for him because children's lives are more important than politics. In an interview Monday on Newsmax, Newsmax is a very far right-wing news network, entertainment network, whatever you want to call it. It's like Fox News with even more to the right. The Republican leader emphasized his commitment to the pro-life cause. Well, I think defending the unborn first and foremost is more important than politics. I really believe it's the calling of our time, Pence told News Nation. Whatever the future holds for my family, we're going to continue to champion the right to life. We're going to continue to champion the interests of women, born and unborn. So when I have more time, I want to do a full video on this, discussing how the right has used abortion to get more voters, essentially, get more voters. The Cliff Notes version of it is decades ago, the Republicans were working together to find some kind of cause to rally around to get more votes. And abortion just became one of the issues that they just landed upon. It wasn't this big moral decision that they wanted to, that they're against abortions. It was just that is what they found resonated with voters. It's just something they basically picked out of a hat. Not picked out of a hat, but what they did was probably, what's the word? Not case study it, but test it out with some target markets, see how it resonates, and go from there. And it's a brilliant move, to be honest, to position your opponent as baby killers. They just want to kill babies. I saw a video from Trump yesterday that said 9-month abortions, and they're just executing babies. It's a pretty smart move politically, right? To say your opponents just want to kill babies and execute children, essentially. It's just really smart, because you basically demonize the other side, and abortion specifically, since it's supposedly about someone who has not been born yet. If you are anti-abortion, you really don't have to fulfill on much besides just blocking abortion, right? If you are, say, like, if your position is you are pro food stamps, then there's people that you have to answer to. You have to answer to those people that are on food stamps. But when it comes to abortion, it's not like, babies can vote. So it's basically these promises that they can make, and all they have to do to fulfill these promises is just block abortion rights and take away rights from women, right? Like I said, I hate this word, but it's basically virtue signaling to their base, saying, oh, we love babies, and our opponent wants to kill babies and execute them. Now, any sane person would realize that's not true, but we're talking about right-wingers here. So what are you going to do? We got a story from Singapore here, from CNN. We got Singapore executes man for trafficking 2 pounds of cannabis. That is marijuana. This guy right here. A Singaporean man convicted of trying to traffic around 2.2 pounds of cannabis was executed on Wednesday, a sentence lambasted by rights groups and campaigners for its severity at a time when many other nations, including neighboring countries, have adopted a more lenient approaches towards drugs and capital punishment. While cannabis has been legalized in a growing number of nations worldwide, Singapore remains some of the world's harshest drug laws, and its government remains adamant that capital punishment works to deter drug traffickers and must remain in place to maintain safety. I'm not going to butcher this guy's name. A 46-year-old Singaporean was put to death on Wednesday in Changi Prison. Singapore Provision Service said in a brief statement he was hanged. That the article later goes to say, this is just more drug war, essentially. You know, it's cannabis. I think cannabis should be illegal. I don't partake in the drug specifically. I think it's ludicrous that people are put to death for cannabis and other drugs. And actually, I've been on planes that have entered some Asian countries, and what they'll say when you depart the plane, they'll have signs that say, you know, the punishment for bringing in drugs, smuggling drugs, is death. They just tell you that when you get in the country. So not victim blaming here. The guy probably knew what he was getting into, probably knew the risks, but definitely shouldn't have been, you know, killed for bringing in cannabis. I think it should be decriminalized. Most drugs, cannabis specifically, should be legalized. It's just absolutely horrific that this guy got killed. I'm pretty much against the death penalty as well. I don't like the state having the right to execute someone. So, pretty sad story here. Hopefully, drug laws will continue to improve and evolve over time in Asia and other countries and other areas. So, condolences to him and his family. This is a fun little story that I want to talk about, and this is the incel community. Okay, now I'm going to do a video about this later, and the incel community is very similar to flat earthers. Okay, and it's what it is it's not the belief of flat earth or incels or whatever that keeps people in these groups, these fringe groups, but the fact of belonging in these groups. So if you're not aware, incels are people, men mostly, that just can't get laid. They blame, they're lonely, they can't get laid, and they blame everybody else, essentially, instead of trying to improve themselves. I'm going to do some videos about incels later. Pretty excited about that. I don't know much about this guy, but apparently, I don't even know if he's an important guy because Twitter's verification system is dead. And this just means he paid $8. Excuse me. So apparently this guy was a figurehead in the incel community, and he became not an incel. Incel stands for involuntary celibate, which means you can't get laid, and it's not your fault, but basically this guy got laid, so I guess he's not an incel anymore. He tweets, I feel a lot of mixed feelings about leaving the incel community. While it feels good to no longer be incel, I'm going to miss all the friends and connections I made. To all of you who have supported me over the years, thank you. I start a new chapter in my life a bit late. You know, that's fine. Basically what it's saying was, you know, I was in an incel community because I was lonely. I don't know how extreme this guy was. So I'm not going to, comment on that. He might be an awful might be an awful person. He might be unknown, but apparently this was a big name guy in the incel community. And so basically he said he got laid, so he's leaving incels. So my idea was incel is something that you don't want to be because it's involuntary. It just means you want to, but you can't get laid. But look at these responses. It's honestly disgusting that you betray your community when some chick finally settles for you. We'll enjoy being a virgin for some weird cause. No one wants to be an incel. LOL, we're not Jedi. Basically what they say is, they just get together in their incel club and just hate on women and society as general. And basically these guys feel betrayed because this guy was actually able to find someone that slept with him. Why do you leave? Did you manage to stop being an incel? And so then, do you feel no longer being identified with so many sad, depressed men out there? Imagine if normal people are clueless and careless about being a virgin past 25, 30 plus years old. How is it to have now careless ex-incels? Yeah, it's not something to be proud of. if you want to not have sex, that's fine. But the whole concept is incel is involuntary celibate, like you want to. This is the equivalent of LeBron retiring. The incel community has lost their biggest prospect. This is why the incel community will never start a movement and bring about change. It only takes one hoe to sacrifice herself and give some crumbs, and the whole movement would collapse due to too many betraying. Inceldom isn't some clever movement. It's a bunch of men who are ostracized from society. Don't worry, no one will miss you. Fake sale. I hope the stinky hole you got was worth it. I get that, but the less of us remain in the community, the weaker our movement becomes. There's no movement, man. If you're staying a virgin for some cause, you need to stop now and reflect deeply in life. No one in their right mind wants to be an incel. Look out for you, not abstractions like movements. And this guy says traitor. He has black pills, which is the incel kind of logo for incels. And this brings to a bigger point. Essentially, is that very, very similar to flat Earth movement is that these people will get into these communities like flat Earth or incel communities because they're lonely, but they stay, or they're lonely, or because they believe something. For example, incels believe women are awful. There's reasons they can't have sex. It's because how they look. Flat Earthers are say the Earth is flat, whatever. And that's how they get into these communities. But what happens is they stay in these communities and they have friends, and the community becomes their life. They're very similar to religion. So the idea is, if you leave this community, if you leave being an incel, if you leave being a flat earther, or if you leave being in your religion, you lose all your friends, you lose your community, you lose your hobbies, you lose basically everything you built your life around. And so even when shown all the facts that these people in these groups don't want to leave the groups, not because you can't convince them of the facts themselves, which there might be kind of some self-sabotage here where they start believing their own lies. But the fact is that if they were to accept that they were wrong, they would lose their new life they built. So it's very sad. I'm going to do some videos on the incel community later. Very sad. Let's look at the last story for today. We have SEGA of America is unionizing. This is brought to us by IGN. The studio behind Sonic the Hedgehog is asking for higher pay, stable benefits, and better work-life balance. So we got a supermajority of workers at SEGA of America have announced today that they have formed a union under the Communications Workers of America and are asking for voluntary recognition from company management. The group, which is based out of Irvine, California, consists of 144 workers in departments such as brand marketing, games as a service, localization, marketing services, QA, product development, ops, and more. Referring to themselves as AEGIS CWA, they have filed for a union election with the National Labor Relations Board, which will take place unless SEGA of America management chooses to voluntarily recognize the union first. The group has the following goals in its mission statement. Higher base pay for all following industry standards with raises tied to the cost of living and inflation. Improved stable benefits for all, including healthcare, retirement, remote work opportunities, and more. Increased, clearly outlined opportunities for advancement. Balanced workloads and schedules and defined responsibilities for all positions. Adequate staffing of departments to end patterns of overwork. So this is fantastic. I'm very pro-union. And, if a group of people, well, besides cop unions, that's a completely different thing. But if these people got together and said, we're going to negotiate better working conditions and higher salaries together, that's fantastic. There has been a lot of talk for a long time about unionization in the gaming industry and how much it's needed. So what happens is the gaming industry is notorious for underpaying, especially for developers. So developers, if you're a good developer, you can make, $100,000, $200,000, developing, let's say, bank software or, social media software, things like that, writing code. What a lot of these gaming companies will do is they'll offer you maybe, 70%, 60%, maybe 50% of what the market rate is, but say, hey man, you get to work on games. That's so exciting. So you're willing to take the pay cut so you can work on these games. And a lot of people do that. They have stars in their eyes about, their dream of working for Nintendo or Sega or working on games, and they're willing to take a large pay cut for the privilege of working in games. And if somebody who's I've done a little bit of game development just for fun. It's pretty hard work. It can be fun, but it's very hard work. But there's been a lot of talk about unionization because there's a lot of overwork in the gaming industry. I know when I think it was God of War and what is it? Who does God of War? Santa Monica and The Last of Us, Naughty Dog. They had a lot of issues of overwork when they were releasing their new games. So having a union can help you, can protect you from all this overwork. The difficult thing is a lot of people in the tech sector don't really want to unionize. We have a lot of libertarians in the tech sector. They believe very free market capitalism, and they don't want to unionize. With game development, it's a mixture of tech people and entertainment. And now entertainment is famous for having a lot of unions, Writers Guild of America, Actors Guild, things like that. So it's very interesting to see that SEGA of America has voted to unionize. Hopefully more companies in the gaming industry can unionize, get better pay, get better working conditions, and just have better lives overall for people who create these products that bring a lot of joy to many of us. All right, that is the first episode of Saving Progress. So I hope you liked it. We might pull out some of these topics and make them separate videos if they turned out okay, and we'll go from there. I'm not sure how often I'm going to do episodes, maybe a couple times a week. Certainly not going to do it every day starting out. We'll see if we get some traction, and then we'll continue from there. So thanks for watching, guys, and I hope you guys have a great day.